Mr. Bean, Mrs. Gordon, Mrs. McCray, Dr. Leatherwood, Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Hutchinson, Mrs. Ware.
Present.
We'll now take communications, announcements, and schedules. Superintendent. Dr. Davis.
If I could, Mr. President, could we have a discussion of the budget prior to communications? And I'd like Mr. England, the budget, as I know it has been on display, it has been posted, and he will give us the results of that, and then I'll be happy to go right into communications. Good evening, Mr. England.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, members of the board. As Dr. Davis mentioned, tonight we will begin with a public hearing on discussion of the 23-24 amended budget. So occasionally from time to time when things happen during the year that were not in the original budget, we do have to amend it at the end of the year. And so I'll go through briefly those items with you now. Just for your reference, in tab 7 is a detailed listing of those items and also reconciliation between the original budget and how we get to the end. So Mr. Lights, forward the slide, appreciate it. So there's essentially 4 main items here, which is the reason for amending it. One is building renovations and summer construction. We have an aggressive summer construction project scheduled this year, and so not all of that was anticipated at the time the budget was put together at the beginning of the year. The equipment lease, which is part of that, and then the working cash fund abatements, which is essentially the transfers of money from working cash to construction that the board has approved prior to this, and also revised property tax collection estimates. So just kind of giving you an overview, and you've seen these charts before at the beginning of the year. These are the operating funds, the funds you see in purple: education, operations and maintenance, transportation, working cash. And you can see we're revising this to show that yellow box there is essentially our projected surplus for the operating funds. Looking at the non-operating funds, debt service, IMRF Social Security, which is essentially the pension funds, site and construction is the big one, and then torch fund is something that the district doesn't primarily utilize much anymore. You can see those breakdowns there for those 4 funds. The main difference, again, and the reason for the majority of the amendment here is that site and construction fund. So showing those funds being spent this summer, the transfers into that fund, as well as the lease proceeds. And this is just those 2 combined, so you can see kind of a recap of that. So essentially, just like any other budget at the beginning of the year, as Dr. Davis mentioned, it is required to be on display for 30 days, as it has been, on the district's website, available here for anyone to pick up if they wanted so, and does require a public hearing at the beginning of this meeting, and then action is later on in the agenda. And I'm happy to take any questions with regard to the amendment.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Are there any questions from the audience? Hearing none, we'll bring the public hearing for the 2023 proposed amended budget to receive comments. The proposed amended budget for the public. Bring the hearing to a close. Then I will now call the meeting for the school board back to order and ask for a call.
Mr. Bean, Mrs. Gordon, Mrs. McCray, Dr. Leatherwood, Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Hutchinson, Mrs. Ware. Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. I'll now ask the superintendent for communications, announcements, and schedules.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, and as we know, it's both a federal and a state holiday. All 8 of our schools will be closed, and all of our employees, this is a legal holiday, and so they will be off, and we will return with our summer programs on Thursday. But I also wanted to bring to the attention of the board that historically we've closed very early, every day actually, during, I'm not sure we call this a summer break because we're already in summer school, but we generally close very early, and historically we've closed on Fridays in July. We will continue to close on Fridays in July, but for an entirely different reason. This building, which is our district office, will move into the annex into our gym. I look at it as camping out because we will be putting new air conditioning on this building. But all employees will have Fridays off in the month of July. This is the most comprehensive summer program that we've had in the past 6 years. There are more students in the summer stream, more students in mandatory. I can't even name the number of camps that we have. Little children are learning to play golf. And so we had 2 days off, and then we opened our summer program. But we do recognize that there's a certain thing as burnout, and so since it's impossible for us to close very early with the children here in the building, then we will give our employees every Friday off. We're closed for the 4th of July. There's no school, and that Friday, which would be the first Friday in July. And then on July 16th, we will have our district board meeting. But since we are streaming, the district office will not close when we move to the annex. There will be a sign that will indicate where you can enter the district office. And so any business that you choose, other than on Fridays, to transact with us, enrollments, transfers, transportation, we will be available. It's just that we must move out of this building simply because they need to do a stress test on the building to determine how much weight that it can carry. And when I get my report, I'll give you an example of what is happening at the Huth that we did not necessarily anticipate. So I imagine that's part of the budget adjustment. And that is sometimes the stress test indicates that we need to reinforce our roofs. So we don't know that here because we haven't started this process. But at the 3rd floor, all of the ceiling tiles, all of that will come down as they determine how much weight this building can carry. And so we'll be safely, all of us, in the field house. So I'm not sure we're looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to anything that requires creativity. And so therefore, I think the fact that we'll have our little tables and chairs and our computers, just think of the time that we didn't have computers. And I did want to bring to the attention of the board, I didn't realize this, but Mr. Walzak informed me that we do have an IBM Selectric typewriter in case the board needs one that has been there in the warehouse for 22 years. And so he found that the other day, so we're prepared. If anyone is going back to low-tech, we have our IBM Selectric, and just move on with that. But it will be an interesting next 6 weeks as we move forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Item number 4 is audience to visitors pertaining to agenda items only. If there's anyone in the audience, any visitor here who would like to have an audience with the board regarding the items that are in the agenda, would you please come forward now and let us know what you would like to say about the agenda. Are there any visitors who have agenda items? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Williams.
move to approve consent agenda dated June 18th, or every item thereof.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
If I could, Mr. President, this is a long agenda with personnel items, and you will note that there are teachers that we're bringing on today, but there are also retirements and resignations, leaves of absence. I'd like to bring to the attention, although the board is aware of this, Sergio Noodles, who is our custodian. He was in this building for years, and then now he's located at the Richmond Park. He is on FMLA, but he won the National Life Changer Award. He was not able to attend, but I do want to congratulate our students. You know, there's a lot of talk about social media being used in a negative way, and many times it is. This time, students contacted alumni, students contacted students that perhaps didn't even know him. Parents wrote. Over 1,000 votes came in for our Sergio, who has done just a magnificent job as a janitor, and I've never known Sergio to say no. He will always say yes, and he does everything that he can and will continue to do here in the district. But something else that probably very few people know about Sergio, he is Hispanic, and our students, when they want to practice their Spanish, use him. And so he knows that if they ask a question, they're to ask in Spanish, and he responds to them. But on the other hand, because sometimes it was a little difficult for him to know exactly what his responsibilities were, he has a list of things he's supposed to do, and they would read the list to him in Spanish. And I thought of that, and I thought, isn't that the way the world should be? Isn't that what we're supposed to do, all help each other? So he is at home now with an ailment. We look forward to him coming back. But I'm just so proud of not only our employees, but our young people who led the way out with social media in a positive way. And even students who graduated 8 to 10 years ago remembered Sergio, and they responded. And he will receive a $3,000 check from Life Changer. When they came to interview us and interview Sergio, I did not know how this was going to work, but Sergio said to them, this school is about family and it's about kindness. And so if he recognized that, and he said, what I have to do is to make sure that everything that I do, make sure that the family is okay, and that everyone is kind to each other, including me. And I thought, isn't that, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be very sophisticated, but isn't that what we're all about? And so I'm so happy for him. So that's in our agenda also, but the contracts, all of the administrators' contracts, like psychologists, social workers, security, because remember the security are now 162 employees, that is included. But we do, Mr. Hall, have 2 policies that we bring in on first reading to the board. Mr. Hall, if you could share with us, please.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, members of the board. The 2 policies are really driven by recent laws that were passed by our legislature, and I'll just briefly go through what the legislation requires. The first of the 2 is a revised policy 5314 regarding bullying, and that is a product of Public Act number 1030047. And what that Public Act said is that every charter school and every school district in Illinois must follow the model bullying policy that was to be prepared and published by the Illinois State Board of Education by the end of January. And of course, ISB did what it was required to do under the law, and now all of us in Illinois, every school district, must use that as its bullying policy. The model has been set by ISB. So what is before you on first reading this evening is that policy that follows the ISB model policy. Substantively, there aren't a lot of changes. As you know, we've had a bullying policy for years and years. A couple of things that I bring to your attention. One of the requirements of the law, and therefore one of the requirements in our policy, is that within 24 hours of a bullying incident that's identified by the school district, the parents of the students involved in the bullying are to be notified. And that's the parents both of the person who experienced the bullying and the students who may have have been involved in the bullying. So that's in our policy because it's a requirement under the law. Also, there are specific categories of illegal things that are prohibited by law from being the cause of bullying. Those have expanded under the new law and therefore expand under our policy. A couple of the additional categories of unlawful conduct, including bullying based upon physical appearance, socioeconomic status, academic status, pregnancy, parenting status, and homelessness. And so that policy is before you for first reading. It is a renewal of a policy that exists already, and that's in your 5314 in your materials. The second of the two policies is a new policy, policy 5015, and that is pursuant to Public Act 103-0472. And what that Public Act requires is that each school district in Illinois must create a policy that prohibits discrimination and harassment based on race, color, and national origin. And so that's what this policy does. Some of the specific requirements of the law that of course are included in our policy is that there must be a description of various forms of discrimination and harassment based on race, color, and national origin. For example, in our policy, we identify if discipline would be different for people based on their race, their national origin, or their color. Of course, that would be an example of illegal discrimination that we would not have in this district. Another example that we provided is that if class assignments to accelerated classes were different based on anyone's color, race, or national origin, of course that would be illegal discrimination. And so in the law and in our policy, we prohibit such conduct. Another thing that's in the law and in our policy is a prohibition of any retaliation for making a complaint for something that violates the policy. Of course, we can't have anybody punished or treated unfairly because they've made a complaint. Also, the policy includes legal recourses that are available under the Illinois Department of Human Rights. And one of the requirements of the law is that we actually put in the policy the way to contact the Illinois Department of Human Rights in case somebody wouldn't find satisfaction in what we do based on a complaint. In the policy itself, we tell them how they could contact the Illinois Department of Human Rights so that they could continue their action there. So that's a synopsis of the policy, and it is driven by the new law that's been enacted by our legislature. Any questions on either of those policies?
Mr. President, we will bring them back in July so that every board member will have a chance to read these in detail, and if there are any questions, then before we ask for a motion to make them a standing policy, everyone would have an opportunity to comment or ask questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, as I said, we have a number of retirements this evening. If there is a vote to approve the consent agenda, then I would like the privilege of introducing to the board many of the retirees that are here this evening, and we do have just a little something to give them. But I will wait on the board's approval of the consent.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Is there any other discussion about the consent agenda? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ware?
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood?
Aye.
Mrs. McCray?
Aye.
And Mrs. Gordon?
Aye.
Motion is approved. We will now recess for 30 minutes to...
Before we do that, Mr. President, I would like the privilege of introducing Mrs. Kathy Cooper, fifth grade teacher from the Indiana. She has been with us since 1997. If you would come forward. only do so much cleaning and reading, so thank you. And Mr. President, Mrs. Anna Daniels, sixth grade teacher from the Illinois, and she's been with us since 2014.
Dr. Mays.
Mr. President, that sometimes life goes on and you just don't know. I cannot believe that Mrs. Stevenson came to us in 1999, but I guess now she wants to spend a little time with her family. Is she here? Yes, she is. Please.
Oh, it's a dream. My mom worked here for 30 years. Some. Courtney will be back.
Yeah.
And I have a grandson.
Yay!
Finally. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
advertisements.
Oh. Thank you.
Mr. President, we're standing in a building that was Prudential Life, and we opened this and it became our district office. But Mrs. Torres has been with us from the beginning. I can't imagine how the students and the faculty members here are going to react when they don't see her face. But I think she's going to take us to the end of the semester. But you see a lot of security people here, and I think that they're here to honor Mrs. Torres. You may be our longest standing. She does intend to actually retire. Actually, she's not listening. I don't know. When we opened this building, Officer David was our director of security, and he hired he hired both of the people that you're going to hear from tonight. But Lloyd Graham came here in 2011. We bought this building in 2010. We moved in 2011, and he has just done a magnificent job. Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Congratulations.
At 7 o'clock, may we resume our business session at 7:30? We do have refreshments and a little bit of celebratory kinds of things, flowers and things for everyone that's here tonight, and we'd just like 30 minutes to prepare this.
Very good. We'll stand recess to 7:30.
Mrs. Achina and Judith downstairs.
recess for retirees and call things back to order. Next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Davis.
Mr. President. Okay, now it is. To give you the names of our other retirees who were not here with us this evening, Mrs. Alberta Taylor from the Illinois, who started with us in 2020. Darlene Shorter from the Sauk, 4th grade. She started with us in 2002. Maura Culver, our occupational therapist, started in 2019. Della Tucker from the Madison started in 2003, but she also taught at not only the Madison, the Arcadia, and the Richton Square. And Lynn Hanson, who's been at the Arcadia continually since 1998. Can we give all of them a round of applause? And I'm going to deviate slightly from my report. I see Mr. Evans here. We have Mr. Lights. And I asked a question, Mr. Evans. I said, why can't we project on this board? So I know we have a plan. What is the plan? Can we share this with the board? I believe, and I don't say this lightly, I think I'm working with old tech because I say that I purchased these that are there. If I purchase them, we're working with old tech. So what is it that we're going to do, and what is our time frame for turning this into a state-of-the-art facility?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, board. Mr. Lights and myself brought in an organization to look at our audio video, not only in the boardroom, but across the school. So one of the main things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we updated the technology. As Dr. Davis mentioned, the LCD screens in front of you guys will be replaced. So with larger 22-inch monitors, it'll be either LED or LCD screens. The mess that is probably at your feet underneath you will be cleaned up and replaced with what we call HDMI over Ethernet cables. So it'll literally be one cable instead of this spaghetti wire of microphone cables. We're also anticipating replacing the televisions that you see on the wall. Again, as Dr. Davis mentioned, this is technology that came with the building, or was installed when the building was built. So those are the plans. We're going to update the audio video that's in the back that drives the microphones and the audio in the room. We're going to mount video cameras such that we don't have to have cameras like this on tripods, but they'll be mounted to the ceiling, be able to be controlled from a central location somewhere, where like how Mr. Lights is sitting there, but that mess will not be there. And so we take pride, especially in technology, being high tech, not low tech. So that is part of the plan. The phase is to do the boardroom first, and then the other plan is to the televisions that you see around the building, to tie those into, again, a central location, again, managed all by Seamless software, and we will do that. As well as some projector replacements in the PAC, and I think in the commons area downstairs as well. We'll get a fixed audio system there. A lot of times we're taking things and running back and forth. So the plan is, again, is to have audio and video down there, and we can control it from a central location. But to also make it seamless for anyone who comes into the room. I know a lot of times the AKAs use the commons downstairs, so they should just be able to hit a button and it just works, right? Same thing here. We have college presentations. Mr. Lane or anyone else who's using the boardroom should be able to just hit a button and things just work. That is our vision and what Mr. Lights and I came up with and what we wanted to do. So that is in the plans, and that is what we are hoping to do.
Well, we're not just hoping to do it. When will this be finished?
The idea is this summer, so we cram everything into summer. It's like hard to breathe sometimes, but it is I don't want to say our downtime, but it is the time that we're most busiest and we can get all of our projects done. So it's a heavy load, but that is the goal, to try to get it done by the summer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So when we have this done, then they will answer questions, because no, we can do better, and we will. And as you heard, by the time we open, or at least September, because we open very early here in this building, then we will have this upgrade. We're always running around saying, "Where's the microphone? Where's the mic?" Okay, it's time, and that's what we will do. But looking ahead, I did want to share the enrollment. Our closing enrollment this year was 2,432. Every year, our CFO, Craig Englert, projects, not this year, but he's projecting really usually 4 to 5 years out as to where we're going. And so, and remember, this is dependent upon people moving into our district and attending 162. So the Arcadia is closing at 5:45. We think our projection is that it will open slightly smaller. One of the things that we're very hopeful about at the Arcadia, we have an entire wing at the Indiana that we intend to have open with fourth graders, and we're hoping that some of the parents will decide that, particularly if they have more than one child, that they will have their children at the Indiana. So that's an active process that we're engaged in. But 493, 500, the Huth, we're seeing a slight growth from 376 to 393. The Illinois basically remains the same. The Indiana, and this is showing our projection of more fourth graders coming in there. We're projecting 217. The Madison, because we do see younger families moving into the district, and I talked about that several times, that we're bottom heavy. So we think that the Madison will be 422. One of the things that Mrs. Houston brought to my attention was the fact that she very, very much would like to have an additional assistant principal. So Mr. Blackburn, it's my understanding that he's been meeting with Dr. Tomich, who's in charge of that school, and with Mrs. Houston. We will be transferring in the same position as assistant principal, Mr. Blackburn, from the Illinois to the Madison. The Richton Square, the Richton Square is driven only by a grant. We peak at 210, so it will never be any larger than that. Obviously, little 3- and 4-year-olds need as much personal attention as they can get, and so there is no intent to increase the Richton whatsoever. It looks like the Sauk is going to be down slightly, and then we're projecting a out-of-district increase. In other words, students that we have referred either to a therapeutic center or to an alternative school. We think that we're going to go from 41 to 53. We'll see where we are, and I will continue to give you information on a monthly basis about our enrollment. But we closed at 2432. The projection is 2416, which is really not that much of a change, but we will see where we are. I think I've shared also that we have been stable for years, and even though we went to COVID, now I think people have bringing their children back to school if in fact they kept them at home, because we did see growth in the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So are there questions about what we're looking at as we go into the new year, first of all?
President?
Yes, Dr. Leatherwood.
Quick question. So they're opening a wing for the fourth graders at the Indiana. Is there any kind of like marketing material that's going out to let families know that that space may be available for their little ones?
Yes, there will be, but what we're having are parent visitation nights,
Okay.
and the parents are physically in the building.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I really think that this was just a result of changes in the administration, other things but I think that the community is very comfortable. And I also think that the growth that we'll see once we finalize the scores on the IRA, I think the Indiana did, I don't want to say fantastic, but an excellent job this year. I don't know what I consider to be fantastic yet, so I can't define that. but they did an excellent job this year. And our parents are always concerned and sending their children where they feel that they're getting the best education. So I think that we'll have a division, if not two, at the Indiana this coming school year. So that's where we will be. The next, Huth Construction. Now, I was shocked by this. I don't know. Hopefully you can see your screens. I don't know. Okay. On your right, that is the library. That is the Huth Library. When our architects did a structural analysis of the roof, because we're going to, at the Huth, as you know, this was a 2-year project. Now I'm officially announcing it's going to be a 3-year project at the Huth because of what we found. They saw that we were not going to be able to put a new air conditioner on top of the small gym or on top of the library. And the library is connected to several classrooms because of the fact that they did not believe that the roof would be able to accommodate that kind of weight. So as you can see, this is a huge job now. We're down to something that we didn't anticipate doing. However, it could be, I'm not saying that it is, it could be that as we, because you know all of our 8 buildings, we're looking at this, including this, we're going to go all the way up to the top to see what's underneath and to look at what they call the weight-bearing walls, and that's what they saw here. So there's a lot more that's going into this than we anticipated. So this is the smaller gym at the Huth. We saw the same thing. In order to augment and to change the air conditioning system, then this required us being able to stabilize the walls. But this was a shock to me with the library. So I don't know if there are comments on that. But I would not know this was the same space. But it is. It's the library. Mrs. McCray, I think you're...
Yeah, I have a question. You may be able to answer. But when they realized that the weight was too heavy for the existing support structure, is the plan to reinforce it, or you have to find a different location?
No, we're reinforcing. That's what you see. We're reinforcing. But I'm not saying, we're not talking about what we saw at Lockport where something is collapsing. On every building, before they make a change, they're going to make sure that the new air conditioners, which are here, by the way, they're in our annex, that we would not have a problem with the weight. The Huth, as you know, you can see in the picture back there, is one of our older schools. And so I'm assuming that the way that the construction was built, now if you want a more sophisticated answer in terms of construction, then I will have Mr. Walzak come, or our con. But I talked to them this afternoon and I asked why was there such, well, it's a radical change in the library. I wouldn't have known it was the library when I first saw it. But it's because the Huth will not just receive one, they're looking at 2, possibly 3 new air conditioners. The Huth is our largest building. Well, if we take this out of the mix, is our largest the building. But if you look at this from a different perspective, I don't, that's possibly not true because this facility is actually 3 separate buildings, and the educational component may not be larger than the Huth. We're just looking at 3 floors. The Huth is 1 floor, but I just wanted to show you this, and this is an extremely complex procedure. We have 8 companies out there now. We've got roofers, as we talked about before. We've got air conditioning people. We've got painters. We're pushing because of the fact that in 6 weeks, we'll be welcoming teachers back to school. But I just wanted you to see what is going on beneath the surface, because usually you see it and it's beautiful and ceiling and everything, but this is what they're dealing with, and it's interesting to me as I walk the hallways.
So you mentioned that now it's a 3-year project. Does that mean that essentially this summer was struck would be just for the structural changes, and we're pushing the air conditioning to next summer installation?
Absolutely not. Absolutely, no. This is the year of the air conditioning, no matter what. No matter what. So, but the plan originally was that we were going to put in new lockers, new carpeting. Everything depends upon the pace at which we air condition, because if we had no air conditioning here, we'd be extremely uncomfortable. Our children cannot learn well if they're overheated, and so no. But I doubt that we're going to have time to do new lockers and those kinds of things, because that means pulling them out of the wall, etc. But air conditioning, we're not going to compromise on. So looking at the next slide, and Dr. Mays is here. Did she leave? Okay, well, that's okay. This is the Arcadia Library, and if you've been in the Arcadia Library, when we took down all of those walls that were not support walls and opened the library up, then you can see the size of it, and I think it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So that's where we are with the Arcadia now, and we're moving on to the other buildings. But there's no way that one company that we would be dependent upon them to do what we need to do. And so, therefore, we have several companies that are with us, and we have our Mr. Walczak, who has no patience anyway, and so he's out there every day. But we can tell because, for example, the Illinois houses the STREAM program. On one day, we had 12 classrooms to go down, and by the end of the day, the repairman had brought this back up to 3. We don't want to keep doing this. What we want to do also, when we finish with the air conditioning, I would love for us to negotiate a maintenance contract with, we might have to go out to bid, but a maintenance contract so that there's someone looking at our heating and air conditioning on a continuing basis rather than just responding when we come, if that makes sense. I realize that costs money because you're paying for something that may or may not happen, but you know how hot it is, and you know that even though they want to respond, they have to be calls upon calls from other districts and other private customers because it is extremely hot. But air conditioning is our priority, and all the air conditioners have been delivered, but that's a process. If you look out the window, you see a parking lot that's in bad shape because of construction. Probably we will not be able to do, Mrs. McCray, the parking lot this summer. We anticipate having more ruts when those big trucks come in and start to lift these air conditioners up. If there are ruts, we just have to put up with the ruts until Christmas because the main objective is air conditioning and making our schools comfortable for teachers and children. So that's where we are with that. Our summer program, it puts a smile on my face because I think all children belong to us in school. And I'm happy that our parents have responded. It's a larger STREAM program. Dr. Tomis tells me the parents continue to call and say, is there additional room? However, during the summer, we lower the class size, and so we actually do not have additional space. One of the pictures that was shared with me, our little third graders, and we have a golf club, a STREAM golf club, and I compliment our golf clubs that surround us because when they understood the concept, then they opened up their hearts and they agreed to take these little small children, and you see them standing there with their little golf clubs, the golf pro talking to them. What we did have to do after they finished with the golf pro, then the teacher reinterpreted what was said, because what we had was one of the kindergarten groups, they simply took a ball and went over and put it in the hole because that's what they understood it to be. So teachers speak the language, but we do have, but we're not out this week. We're not out doing anything. Recess is canceled. We're not out doing anything to expose the children. It's far too hot outside. But I love the creativity of our teachers. My compliments to Dr. Cougar, who is there all the time, and they're learning, but they're learning with smiles on their faces. Now, it is true that on the other side of the house, the mandatory summer school, perhaps they're not as happy, but we are determined that you learn to read and read well. Math, we continue. That's our Achilles heel. We did not do the job that we hoped to do on Zoom with math, and so therefore, the other side of it, the question and the issue is, did you do what you were supposed to do as a student? And the answer is sometimes no. I look at this building, they have 5 children taking PE. If you dress for PE and you do your exercises, you pass. What is so weird? We have PE during the summer and plain old physical education. So I look at that from many different ways. But on the stream side, I love those smiles. I get pictures and I see them out. We have field trips that are planned for them. We're hoping that the weather will break and we'll be able to do some things that we were not able to do in the regular school year. So things are going magnificently well. We have had no big picture problems, not with staff and not with children. So that concludes my report. If there are any questions, then I'm happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from the board on the superintendent's report?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Gordon.
regarding who, so the problem has been identified, now they're fixing it, they're reinforcing the walls, so we're still going to be on plan for fall opening? Okay.
I will let you know if anything happens. Nothing has happened to make us worry.
It just looks so,
I know. So
Mrs. Kelvin,
we have one day off for Juneteenth. The district is off the 4th and 5th for the 4th of July. The contractors will work on the 5th of July, and they will work every Friday. That has nothing to do with the education staff being off. So, and we're prepared for overtime also. I don't see an issue at this point. If I see something, then I will let you know. But I did want to show you this. When I saw this is huge, this task. But that's why we anticipated that, and we have contractors out there that so far we're not concerned.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Is there any legislation, Dr. Davis?
No, sir. They're in recess.
Move to new business. The board will consider approval of the employment contract with Latonya Slaughter as assistant principal for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the employment contract with Latonya Slaughter as assistant principal for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second?
So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, Mrs. Slaughter has been at the Richardson Square since the very beginning. I would say with the exception of the person that wrote the original proposal, who is Yvonne Williams, and Mrs. Deborah Dusky, she is probably more conversant and more, she's the person that can answer any question about any issue because we are grant driven. But Mrs. Slaughter, who has been with us for some time, has a Master's of Arts from Concordia University, a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, Information Systems. That's interesting because it's more what I would see at today's point from Chicago State University. But when I thought about the school, I thought about Mrs. Slaughter, and her ex-principal was here earlier today. I don't know if she's still here, simply to congratulate her. There she is. No one ever leaves the family. You may transfer to another. I think you're all the way up north, but it's my pleasure to nominate Mrs. Slaughter. I know that she is child-oriented. She is knowledgeable of the program, and she has a work ethic that mirrors mine, and that is we work until the job is done. So it is with no hesitation that I recommend to the board that we approve the position of assistant principal for Mrs. Slaughter at the Richton Square.
Good. Is there any discussion from the board? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Ware.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Congratulations. Would you like to make any remarks?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Davis, distinguished members of the board, senior cabinet, and my fellow administrators. It is an honor to stand before you tonight. I want to thank you first to Yvonne Williams, Debbie Dusky, Shalonda Porchbox, Jamie Goodley, Kim McGuire, and above all, our superintendent, Dr. Davis, as I carry out the mission at Richton Square School. It is with great pleasure to accept the position as the assistant principal at Richton. I appreciate your confidence in my abilities, which have significantly contributed to my success and professional growth. Since beginning at the Square, I have developed in all areas as a teacher, instructional coach, program coordinator, and now the assistant principal. I benefited from the mentorship of Narisha Parham and now the support of Kim McGuire. Their guidance has been invaluable to my growth as an instructional leader. I'm eager to continue the mission and of excellence is the expectation, and excellence is who we are. With the team of professionals at Richton Square, we strive to provide the foundation for our littlest learners and their families where we call home the Square. Lastly, I want to thank my family and friends for their prayers and support throughout my educational journey. Being an educator is not for the faint of heart. It takes grit, hard work, and a love, especially for the children and their families. It has been a long journey, and I am so appreciative of the many opportunities that I have been given. Once again, thank you so much for your continued support, Dr. Davis, and I look forward to expanding as assistant principal at Richton Square, where it all begins. Thank you.
Mr. President, could we also acknowledge for the minutes that Mrs. Parham, the former principal, came out in support of, and I think that's beautiful because she knows what a gym we have. She knows how much expertise she has. But thank you, Mrs. Parham, for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please let the record so note. The board will now consider approval of the employment contract with Kelly Hughes as principal for the 2024-2025 school year.
Mr. President,
Yes, Dr. Leatherwood.
move to approve the employment contract with Kelly Hughes as principal for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion? Dr. Davis.
Mr. President, Mrs. Hughes has a Bachelor of Arts degree in business from Robert Morris University, a Bachelor of Science in Education from Quincy University, and a Master's of Science in School Leadership from Concordia College. But probably the most important thing that I have the opportunity to do is really not to choose higher levels of management. Our associate superintendents, Dr. Douglas, Dr. Hamilton, and Mr. Talley, Dr. Tomich, I appreciate that. But to me, the significance of who leads the school, who directs the school on a daily basis, who is a role model for the children and who understands the process that we have to go through to teach to mastery. That's the most important thing that I do. And I looked at Mrs. Hughes and I looked at her background. You may not know, but Mrs. Hughes has been principal of several different schools in Chicago, and I looked at that. I looked at the fact that she was a network instructional support coordinator, and then I thought when she came to us, in my mind, because I'm always into the why of something, why did she choose to come to 162? Because she came to 162 as an assistant principal. She came to 162, I've come to the conclusion now because we are what we are. I come from Chicago, so I know that there are some magnificent schools in Chicago and that there are schools that are struggling, and I think we all know that. But one of the issues in Chicago that I encountered and still exists is that sometimes you're not permitted because of circumstances. We won't discuss the circumstances. This is not Chicago. You're not permitted to do what you need to do for the children that are entrusted to you. There's never been a time since I've been here that any board or any administrator has been denied the opportunity to do what we know that we should do for children, that we just don't even think of things in that way. And so as I began to look at the evolution of Mrs. Hughes, what I saw and what I still see, and my reason for recommending her to you, not only is she creative, not only is she a good role model, and certainly she is, but she's a master at what she has perfected over the years, and that is her knowledge of curriculum. I listen to what it is that she has to say. I know that she understands standards. I know that she understands what mastery truly means. And the other thing to me, and this may seem maybe difficult to understand, to me, excellence is something that's concrete. It's not nebulous. It either is or it isn't. And it disturbs me when people don't see that if we don't give that kind of education to our children, then we're remiss in our responsibilities. But that is not who Kelly Hughes is. I have confidence in her. Next year, when we receive our scores, you're going to see a dramatic improvement in the SOC because that's who she is, but that's also who she demands in terms of respect. I hear what the teachers have to say, and I value what my teachers think because they know, probably better than I do, because they're with in the schools each and every day, which of our people in terms of leadership know what it is to teach a small child who has no concept of how to put letters together and the fact that it makes a word. Words make a sentence. And so have you ever thought about, and I never mentioned this to the board, the task that our teachers had to teach a child to read via Zoom? When those letters, they may make sense to us, they make no sense to the children. And so the whole concept of how children learn has always intrigued me, but I know because I've had the opportunity to have conversations with Mrs. Hughes. I've monitored her. I've seen her give presentations both in this district and other districts, but she did something when you want to when you have a goal out there, or as I say on the Southland side, when you have a dream, and she had a dream of coming to a district where there were no limitations. And so this evening, I am able to fulfill one of my dreams, and that is enabling her to make the SALC what I know that it's capable of being, and that is a beacon of excellence. So I have absolutely no reservations whatsoever. Mrs. Hughes is what her resume says she is, and that is a superior educator. That's what she is. And so she has my recommendation, and I know that she was at another location and she was struggling to get here, but she is here. And when you hear her speak, I hope that you're envisioning her in front of a group of children and the knowledge that she's going to bring to them because that's who she is.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Ware.
Aye.
Motion is passed. Congratulations, Mrs. Hughes. Won't you please come forward?
And she is not shy. So if she's walking slowly, it's not because she's shy. She is not.
I'm not, I'm just tired. But good evening, Dr.
Good evening.
Davis and members of the board, and to district administrators and to my colleagues. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. First coming as an assistant principal 2 years ago, and so having the last 2 years to learn more about the district and the vision and not having limits to the work we need to do at Salk and getting the opportunity to learn our parents and our students and our community. And now for the vote of confidence as we go forward as the principal, I am excited to continue the work that we've already started. I'm excited we got a few positions we're gonna fill and we've got some new team members coming in. And so I'm excited about the energy we have about teaching students. And so I appreciate all of the support and the vote of confidence, and we will be the beacon of excellence that I know that you know we can be, because I don't want to get fussed at in the background if we're not. But because our kids can do it, and we've got a great staff that is ready to take our students to the next level, and so I'm just excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. President,
Yes, Dr. Davis.
the reason that we haven't had this long goodbye for Dr. Morgan, he's not going anywhere. So Dr. Morgan is going to lead our attendance and truancy initiative. And so he will be reporting to us about the improvements that he's making. But Dr. Morgan, seriously though, I appreciate everything that you have done. And now you're going to bring your knowledge to the district as a whole. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, which means, I guess, we didn't give you any cake. However, that is not a lack of affection.
Oh, we have cake.
Yes,
Could
yes.
someone in-
You can
that
get more
will-
cake.
Before they leave, yes.
Yes,
Let me
fantastic.
send a text message. We have the cake.
The next item, the board will consider approval of the 2023-2024 amended budget. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Gordon.
move to approve the 2023-2024 amended budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Ware,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon.
Aye.
Next, the board, the motion is passed. The board will consider approval of the amended shared service agreement. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the Southland College Prep Charter High School amended shared service agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
The moved and second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Engler.
In 2021, both the Madison District 162 and Southland College Prep Charter High School boards approved a shared services agreement for the sharing of services of several staff members as well as some contracts. And so that agreement stands today, but there is an addendum or appendix to that agreement that gets updated every year, which really specifies what the breakdown of costs are in between the two districts. So it's reflective of present day allocations. So essentially what you're approving this evening is an update to that amendment for the 24-25 school year. Substantially, it is the same as what you saw last year. Last year, I believe there was food service included on there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's not on there anymore. And the only other change is extremely minor. So, but essentially, the agreement is the same as it was before.
Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Ware.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is approved. We'll now move number 5. We're considering the food service management agreement. Is there a motion regarding that?
Mr. President,
Yes, Dr. Leatherwood.
move to authorize District 162 Superintendent to execute an agreement with the Food Service Management Company approved by the Illinois State Board of Education through ISB's review process to provide student food services for District 162 students, with the Board of Education to ratify this agreement at its next meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Englert.
On Monday, June 10th, we had the pleasure of opening proposals for food service management companies who would occupy the kitchen next door here in the annex and supply food to District 162 and the other 6 cooperative entities. There's 5 school districts and, of course, Southland College Prep. And so as part of that process, it's a very lengthy, intricate process that we're required to go through with the Illinois State Board of Education. Once we open those proposals, we read those prices publicly aloud, but then from there, there's a very intricate rubric that we go through to analyze those proposals. And so we're still in the process of doing that now. Actually, we're just waiting on a couple of references to come back. Once that happens, we will then have a final score and a recommendation, which will then go to the Illinois State Board of Education. They will approve that and send that back to this board to approve the contract with the food service management company. And also all the other boards will also subsequently then approve it with their boards too at that time. So each school district will have an individual contract with that food service management company. So that's why this evening we're asking that the board give the superintendent the discretion to go ahead and approve that contract so we can get moving on it. So we're not waiting until the end of July to approve a new contract, and that gives that company essentially just a couple of weeks to get set up.
Is there any other discussion from the board? I suppose I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Englert. The other school boards, are we aware that they're putting themselves in a position to be able to expedite their decision? If we have one of the 5 or more that don't approve or want to delay their approval process, how will that impact our
So,
service?
yes, in some cases, those boards were put on notice that they may be doing a special meeting. Once that happens, in other cases, I think some of those boards were going to approve a resolution similar to what you're doing this evening, or a motion rather, similar to what you're doing this evening, and some have meetings that are later in the month. We should hopefully have a formal recommendation within a couple of days, and then we would just hope that ISB gets back to us relatively quickly so that we can get moving.
Very good, thank you. Is there any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, would the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Ware.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Moving to old business. Is there any old business?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Board member issues and reports. Are there any board member issues or reports to be presented? Seeing none, we're now at the audience to visitors. At this time, if any visitors present would like to have an audience with the board, now would be your time to come forward. State your name, state your address, where you live, and make your presentation. Are there any visitors who would like to have an audience? Are there any visitors who would like to have an audience? Yes.
I think I missed my opening on board members' issues and reports. I just wanted to publicly thank Eric Light for his excellent job that he does on all of the graphics for the graduation. They are so professionally done. People think we sent out someplace for some big company, and our big company is right there.
Very good. Here, here. Any other board member issues? We're going back to board members. That's fine. Very good. Seeing that, moving forward to the audience, I heard none from the audience, so we'll now move to, we will now consider the board going into executive session to consider purchase or lease of real property and/or pending, probable, or imminent litigation pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C5 and 5 LCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Gordon.
move that the board will go into executive session to consider the purchase or lease of real property and/or pending, probable, or imminent litigation.
Any discussion about moving into executive session?
Mr.
Seeing none.
President, if I could,
Yes, Dr.
but
Davis.
this would take an amendment to the motion.
Sure.
I think we should add that no a business will be conducted as a result of the executive session. We will not come out of executive session and go into open session for the purpose of passing a motion.
Very good.
Maybe Mr. Hall wants to restructure that.
If it's the pleasure of the board, I would recommend, as Dr. Davis suggests, that we add to the motion a notification to everybody here present and the public that there will be no action taken by the board after closed session, so that people don't feel that they need to wait and hear if there's going to be additional business conducted. If that's acceptable to the board, perhaps the board members could indicate that by saying aye.
Aye.
It seems that we have a unanimous approval from the board members that no business will be conducted after the closed session.
Very good. So that would transact it. We don't have to accept the amendment or restate?
No, I think that should do it.
Very good. Is there any other discussion on the motion? The Secretary, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray, Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Ware.
Aye.
Motion's passed. We are now going to executive session. Thank you, everyone.